Let me turn then to the other story tonight, a story which has been building for several days because the Prime Minister, Narendra Modi, is finally set to reshuffle his cabinet on Sunday morning. And what is now becoming clearer is that this is not a minor reshuffle. As many as 6 to 8 ministers could be on their way out. At the same time, several new ministers and new faces will come in, and there will also be a reshuffling of portfolios. Those are some of the names that we are showing you at the moment of those who could be getting in. Let's take a look at the inside track of who's in and who's out. First, take a look at those who we are saying are clean bowled. These are the people who we are saying are clean bowled at the moment. They include Rajiv Pratap Rudy. He was the first to resign yesterday itself. Remember, Rajiv Pratap Rudy is the minister from Bihar, skill development minister. He is among those who's going to resign. So Rajiv Pratap Rudy, the first minister who resigned. Today, we are told that Bandadru Dattatray, the MP from Sikandrabad in Andhra Pradesh, has also submitted his resignation. The Labour Ministry, one of the reasons for the resignation of Rajiv Pratap Rudy is that he is the skill minister of the country and he is resigning as well. Also resigning is Uma Bharati. We are told she could resign. The poor performance of the Clean Ganga campaign means that she is going to resign. Also resigning is Sanjeev Balyan, the member of parliament from Muzaffarnagar. We are told that the lack of interest that he has shown in the water resource ministry is one reason why he could go. The other ministers, Mahendra Pandey, MP from Chandauli in Uttar Pradesh, the new UP state president. There's a caste balancing that's going on in Uttar Pradesh. He's on his way out. Kalraj Mishra, the old BJP stalwart of Uttar Pradesh, also on his way out, set to become a governor. Fagan Singh Kuluste, the MP from Madhya Pradesh, is also on his way out. Also on his way out at the moment are Suresh Prabhu could be removed from railways and moved to environment and water resources. So we are calling that a second innings that Suresh Prabhu is set to get. Let's take a look at who is likely to then be brought in. Some of those who are now the rising stars, as we are calling it. Nitin Gadkari, seen as a go-getter, he is likely to get a major ministry. Piyush Goyal, stellar performance in the power ministry, he is likely to be elevated to cabinet rank. Dharmendra Pradhan, successful rollout of the Prime Minister's pet Ujjwala scheme, also likely to be elevated. Prakash Javadekar is non-controversial and he will continue in his ministry in HRD. Smriti Irani likely to retain information and broadcasting. These are some of the details that we can give you at the moment. Joining me now is my colleague Rahul Kawal, also Rahul Srivastav joining me. Rahul, give us a sense. From what I can gather from these names, it's clearly an exercise where the Prime Minister wants to weed out the so-called non-performers. This is his last opportunity. How many ministers can we expect by Sunday morning who will be on their way out?
Rajdeep, from what we've understood by speaking to highly placed sources, there was a minister who is now in a constitutional post who was given the responsibility of compiling a performance audit of all the ministers. Every single day, what have they done, their successes and failures very clearly mapped. The PMO's message is it's perform or perish. If you haven't performed, you will perish. Reviving the languishing job market is one of the key priorities, and the Prime Minister is peeved with the Namami Gange project implementation, the lack of progress on labour reform, and the fact that Skill India is not taking off, and ministers in charge of all these three projects are on their way out.
The big question, of course, is that there are lots of gaps also, Rahul, because there have been ministers who've had dual responsibilities, information and broadcasting, textiles with Smriti Irani. You've had the urban development minister now becoming the vice president, Venkaiah Naidu. You've had the environment minister, Anil Dave, passing away. So can we expect now a complete rejig in terms of fill in the blanks and a number of new faces coming in from the outside? Some of the names that you're giving us, Prahlad Joshi, for example, from Karnataka, likely to be inducted, 3-time MP from the Dharwad region. So can we expect new faces? Is the Prime Minister now ready to experiment with new faces?
You know, Rajdeep, this is something that a lot of editors and analysts speak about, the need to bring in technocrats and talent from the outside. But this is not something that the party and the RSS believe in. They believe in promoting their own talent as opposed to bringing people from the outside. They believe the fact that the likes of Arun Shauri and Jaswant Singh and Yashwant Sinha were brought in the last time went against them. They don't want that to happen. What we know is Vinay Sahasrabuddhe, possibly Om Mathur, who you know well is very close to both Modi and Shah, Prahlad Patel, Prahlad Joshi, Satyapal Singh, Suresh Angadi and RCP Singh. These are the names that at this time we're reasonably confident have got intimation that they will be swearing in 10 a.m. Sunday morning.
I also want to understand from you, Rahul, the defense ministry hasn't had a defense minister since Manohar Parrikar left for Goa. Are we expecting now a fresh face in the defense ministry?
So there are 2 or 3 things we know. First and foremost, Arun Jaitley, he said this now publicly, is very keen on leaving defense for somebody else. He even suggested, as you know, Rajdeep, 2 names to the Prime Minister. The Prime Minister heard both those names and said, "Inse nahi hoga." The other reality, and I can say this in very good authority, the Prime Minister's office believes that Arun Jaitley is done well as Defence Minister, because a lot of the problems earlier were MOD files which were being stalled by the Finance Ministry because of lack of funding. There have been instances where something which was earlier stalled by the Finance Minister and the Ministry has now been pushed by Jaitley as Defence Minister. So that's been happening as well. So they don't want to necessarily rock that. As of now, no final decision taken. Jaitley very keen. The Prime Minister at this time not certain about the options he has.
Rahul Srivastava. Rahul Kanwal, thanks very much for joining us. Our colleague Rahul Srivastava will also be joining Rahul Kanwal at 10 p.m. tonight. We'll have more details on that big cabinet reshuffle. Let's move on though, because one of the biggest challenges facing the Narendra Modi government, as is becoming apparent with this cabinet reshuffle, is the fact that skill development, a ministry which the Prime Minister claimed would project his Skill India project, is the one where the minister has resigned, Rajiv Pratap Rudy. This comes at a time when the growth rate has suffered, but more importantly, there are growing worries over jobs. 15 lakh people, according to a CAMI report, lost their jobs in the first 3 months of 2017. The big challenge then for this government could be tackling the job creation problem.
Skill India, Narendra Modi's ambitious project to create 40 crore job-ready youth, launched in 2015. Now it sounds more like an empty slogan. And the man in charge of skilling India for the new age jobs himself has lost his job.
Now I have tendered my resignation. For us, the party is the most important thing. And I think there is much to be done. So it's a decision of the party and I have abided by it. It's absolutely perfect.
The biggest challenge politically for Prime Minister Narendra Modi is job creation. He was voted to power by an aspiring India, an India where 65% of its population is under the age of 35.
भारत के लिए सबसे पहली अगर कोई प्राथमिकता है तो देश के नौजवानों के लिए रोजगार उपलब्ध कराना। इस मिशन के द्वारा उन सभी आवश्यकताओं को पूर्ति करने का प्रयास हो रहा है।
It is now time to deliver. Elections are just 2 years away and the Prime Minister has to make good on his promise. But things as they stand are not quite favourable for the government. A study by the Centre for Monitoring Indian Economy says 15 lakh people have lost their jobs in the first 3 months of 2017. The manufacturing sector and small and medium enterprises in particular are the worst hit. First, they were dealt a body blow by demonetization and then the uncertainty of GST.
हमने जो सर्वे किया है उससे इतना तो साफ जाहिर है कि जॉब्स को लेकर के परेशानी है। लोगों में एक तरह का डर है कि क्या हमारी नौकरियां कायम रहेंगी।
To make matters worse, the global torchbearer of the India story, IT sector itself is in trouble. There are massive layoffs across major IT companies. Software engineers are being sacked to cut expenses.
मैं 9 साल का ऊपर काम कर रहा था टेक महिंद्रा में, ओके, बट आप लोगों का सर्विस इतना करने के बाद भी, आई मीन दो इट इज अ लॉयल सर्विस, सडनली एक दिन बोला कि हम लोग को रिजाइन करो, बोल रहे हैं, नहीं तो टर्मिनेट करेंगे बोल के बोला। इट इज क्या बोलूं, जैसे शॉक हो गया हम लोग को, क्या करने बोल के बाहर आने के लिए नहीं सोच रहा था।
According to latest figures, India's growth in the first quarter has slumped to 5.7%, a big 2% drop year on year. With growth dropping, Prime Minister Modi has a tough task on his hands. He knows the 2019 elections will only be about jobs, jobs and jobs. And he knows it's time to get cracking. With Pankaj Kelkar in Pune, Bureau Report, India Today.
Let's raise the big questions first tonight. The simple big question is, the Prime Minister's biggest challenge after he formed the government was job creation. Has Narendra Modi been able to deliver on the critical issue of jobs? Is job creation simply the Prime Minister's big challenge? That's the first question. My second question, does the growth slump that we are now seeing in the country mean more job losses, particularly for the young? What should be done to create jobs? It's not an easy solution. What can the solution be? The fourth question, will 2019 be decided by jobs? Could that be a big election issue? The number five question, is Skill India ending up as an empty slogan? It was a big slogan for the Prime Minister not too long ago. Let's turn to my guests at the moment. Joining me now is Rituparna Chakrabarti, Executive Vice President and co-founder of Team Lease Services. Also joining me is Suman Sinha, Chairman CII Northern Region. Gurcharan Das, author, columnist and economic affairs expert is joining me. And also joining me is Rajiv Dubey, our Managing Editor, Business Today. We're running pictures of Bandadru Dattatreya, but he's not the person we should be running. It's Rajiv Pratap Rudy. Because Rajiv Pratap Rudy is the first minister to have quit in this cabinet reshuffle. And Rajiv Pratap Rudy is the one who was supposed to spearhead Skill India. What has happened to Skill India, the Prime Minister's pet project? Is that one area where the Prime Minister is going to have to address as he looks to give a facelift to his government?
If you look at the Skill India numbers so far, government says, at least the ministry says that up to 15-16 is the numbers available, 16-17 numbers are still not available. 15-16, the number of people that they skilled is of the region of about 19.83 lakh people. And of that, the employment that has been generated, people placed, is short of 50%. So the total employment that has been generated just by the Skill India program is substantially less than what the government actually requires on the ground. And if you look at the Ministry of Labour and Employment numbers, the total, and they only capture 8 sectors. They capture 10,000 units across the country and only 8 sectors. And in these 8 sectors, in the last number that they have come out with, the employment generated was only 1.22 lakh. We need something like, the numbers that are being talked about is 12 million jobs a year, but actually, if you take out the number of unemployed in the number of self-employed in the country, there are about 50-60% people who are self-employed. Even then, we need about 4 to 5 million jobs at the bare minimum.
I have some troubling figures, and I want to understand whether these figures should be seen as a sign of the times in which, in a sense, we live. Because the CMI, the Center for Monitoring Indian Economy, has put out some troubling numbers a couple of weeks ago. And I want to come to you, Rituparna Chakrabarti, because you work with an HR-driven company at Team Lease Services. Can you tell me, Rituparna, the 1.5 million jobs lost in January to April 2017, the workforce clearly suggests that there is something, and this is not just IT sector, so something seriously is going wrong with the job creation. Do you believe that there is a serious problem at the moment in the ability to create new jobs?
Thank you, Mr. Sardesha. Actually, a lot has happened over the last 6 to 8 months. I think first we saw the demonetization wave, which deeply impacted certain sectors, and particularly sectors which employ a large number of informal workers. Sectors like construction, sectors like gems and jewelry, sectors like the entire infrastructure, I think, and also certain segments of the SME sector got deeply impacted, which did lead to certain amount of negative impact in terms of the overall job losses that have happened. Of course, there are some sectors which kind of negated it, but I don't think the guys who lost those jobs could have taken up the roles in the areas where the jobs got created simultaneously. And subsequently we saw GST. Essentially, Mr. Sardesai, GST I view as one of the biggest labor reforms that the country has ever done. But it has its own impact because GST is going to bring in a lot of transparency, which will compel a lot of organizations who used to engage again with a lot of informal workers, maybe have had a lot of jugaad engagements in terms of the way people were employed. I think everybody now will be compelled to come into the foray, and that has created also a certain level of disruption. But I feel in the long run, it is expected to have a positive impact. But I think overall, the agenda of labor reform, the agenda of skill development, I don't think has kept pace with the need of the hour, and there has been a lot of expectation, especially on the labor side, because when we're talking about job creation, not any jobs, we're talking here about formal job creations. I think so far the show to me has been a little disappointing, especially from what has come out so far from the Ministry of Labor. Similarly, skills. I think for us as an organization, the challenge has been, while whatever jobs that we see are existing, it's becoming a challenge to fulfill those jobs, and that's clearly a skilling issue right now.
Skilling, then
so
given that
I know
that
we do
issue,
not have enough jobs as much as we need to have, 12 millions.
No, given that skilling issue, because let's be honest, the Prime Minister, and I'll play his bite when he spoke about skilling jobs as well. Sumant Sinha, a lot was made about Skill India. Today we've had the Minister for Skill Development resign, and the reason that is being given, at least unofficially, is that the Prime Minister's office is unhappy with the work of the Skill Development Ministry. Here you're hearing the problems that are there with skilling labor. I mean, it's a huge challenge, no one minimizes it, but clearly the numbers which were talked about are not being made. Sumant Sinha, Chairman CI Northern Region. So where is the problem? Is post-demonetization, is this the post-demonetization effect, or is this simply a larger problem when you're confronting a world which is moving to automation technology?
No, Rajdeep, I think there are a few different facets to the question that you just asked me. Number one, we are fond of throwing around numbers from various surveys, from various agencies. I think the first thing to realize is that there doesn't really exist a proper, deep, insightful survey which looks at the entire economy. Most of the surveys that we bandy around are mostly derived from the formal or the organized sector, which actually represents a fairly narrow part of the overall job mix that we have in the country. So, I would a little bit hesitate to rush to conclusions about whether we are creating sufficient jobs or we're not creating sufficient jobs. I think we have to look at the totality of what is happening. And frankly, to be very honest with you, we don't have enough data to come to a very specific or significant point of view or conclusion one way or the other. I think there's a general sense, however, having said what I said, that job creation is lagging the overall requirement of the number of people entering the labor force. And we in CII have done various surveys and studies, and based on whatever data sets we could get access to, and our conclusion is that in the last 5 years, almost about 14 to 15 million jobs have been created against a requirement of about 20 million jobs during the same time period. So there is still a deficit, but the deficit is not perhaps as wide as it is being made out to be. So that is point number one. Point number two is, having talked about the numbers of jobs, it's also a question of the quality of jobs that is being created. And at the same time as jobs are being created, are we also creating enough people who are trained properly, which is the question that you asked me, who can actually take up these jobs? And that's where Skill India came in. And I think on Skill India in general, to answer your question specifically, a lot of work has happened. I cannot comment on whether the minister was asked to go because of his performance or because he was given something to do in the party, or whatever the reason might have been. It's hard to sort of correlate his leaving from and therefore concluding that his performance was not good, and there's an issue with Skill India itself. Whatever I have seen over the last 1 or 2 years, they've created a number of sector councils as part of the overall national skill development mission, and they've actually engaged very deeply with industry to identify the kinds of jobs that need to be created, the kind of training that needs to be imparted, and the way to do that. Now, as you said rightly, the job, the task is really quite mammoth, and whatever is done is going to ultimately end up being insufficient against the the vastness of the
but it is a mammoth task.
But having said that, I think a start has been made, and this start has to be taken forward.
Nobody denies that a start has been made, but it's the expectations. Let's listen into the Prime Minister when he was on the campaign trail in 2014. He was in Agra in November of 2013. What did he say about jobs? Listen in.
कांग्रेस ने लोकसभा के चुनाव में वादा किया था कि अगर हम सत्ता में आएंगे तो 1 करोड़ लोगों को रोजगार देंगे। वादा किया था। अरे भाइयों बहनों, रोजगार लेने की बात छोड़ो, आगरा में तो सारे कारखानों को ताला लगा दिया है, ताला लगा दिया है।
That was the Prime Minister in 2013, and Gurcharan Das, therefore people will ask that when Mr. Modi set that ambitious target of 5 crore jobs that he was going to create in his tenure and Achhe Din, was he always really putting expectations too high? It was impossible in a way, given that there are 17 lakh Indians coming into the job market according to some figures every month, that he was always aiming too high, and the reality was very different.
Yes, that is true. And I think really the problem in India is not unemployment, but underemployment. And what you need in India are not informal jobs, but high productivity jobs. And high productivity jobs really come from exports. So the basic problem of our economy, demonetization, GST are distractions. But the real problem in the economy, which began 3 quarters before demonetization, was the slowdown in growth. And this slowdown is because the economy has been firing on a single cylinder. It has not had the benefit of exports. The single cylinder was consumption or demand, internal demand, and it did not have the benefit of exports or massive investment in infrastructure or other things. So really, our golden age of growth in India was between 2003 and 2011. And the lesson that came from that period was that exports grew at 20 to 25% a year. Now, fortunately, we had at that time tailwinds in the world economy that helped us. Today, these are headwinds. But nevertheless, I think the issue is issue of trade policy, and that's
it's interesting you're saying that. It's interesting you're talking
the cabinet shuffle.
Yes.
I would say that what has failed are some of the ministries dealing with exports like textiles, commerce, etc.
No, I think you make an important point, because many believe that the service sector.
But industrialists are not in there.
Many believe that the service sector, it's not just IT, it's service sector, tourism, for example, could be a big generator of jobs and hasn't been able to keep pace with the supply that is being provided at the moment. And many are saying, Rajiv, that revamp the education system, explore opportunities in agriculture, regeneration of small and cottage industries. But it's those small and medium enterprises linked in a way to what Gurcharan Das says, which were drivers in a way of export-driven growth. The service sector, the smaller industries that were coming, that were providing the job. Now, they've taken the biggest hit post-demonetization and possibly post-GST. So what happens then? Will it get worse before it gets better?
Absolutely. SMEs, if we do not trigger job opportunities in SMEs, this problem cannot be solved. Around the world, SMEs are the biggest generators of jobs. Even in India, 40% of our GDP comes from SMEs. And in a way, Mr. Das is what he's referring to is basically creating top level jobs of very high value, which will also have an impact on the small and medium enterprises. So they are both linked in a way. SMEs will only fire once the top tier industries start to fire, because SMEs are dependent on those industries. Besides that, we have to make sure that we do exactly what China did, and in a way we are trying that in our Make in India campaign, is that areas that we are weak in, China was weak in services, they are pushing services like hell. We are weak in manufacturing, and we need to push manufacturing very, very substantially. And of course, creative and high quality jobs, which is where the money is going to come from, and then they are going to create jobs downstream right up to the SMEs.
You know, let's listen in also to what the Prime Minister said when he launched his Skill India initiative, because it was a laudable initiative, but was it simply a case where again the government was biting more than they could chew given the ambitious targets that were being set? Listen in to what the Prime Minister said then.
भारत के लिए सबसे पहली अगर कोई प्राथमिकता है तो देश के नौजवानों के लिए रोजगार उपलब्ध कराना। इस मिशन के द्वारा उन सभी आवश्यकताओं को पूर्ति करने का प्रयास हो रहा है।
Ritu Patna, you're hearing that if you were advised, you know, as someone who deals in a sense with human resource issues, do you believe that the skill development problem is so vast? You need many more plumbers, you need many more carpenters, you need many more trained truckers. Now, that is what Skill India was supposed to do, set these modules in place which would then fulfill the needs of the job market. But clearly there seems to be a mismatch. Is it simply the fact that with the economic downturn, those jobs are simply not there at the moment?
First and foremost, Mr. Sardesai, I don't think there is anything wrong in setting an ambitious target. So I don't think the target was set too high because India needs as many jobs, and I think aspiration is the starting point of getting things done. In my view, when we're talking about the subject of jobs and skills, it's not about one Prime Minister. What matters are 29 Chief Ministers. I don't think this is a problem that one Prime Minister can solve because these issues are so much at a local level. The challenges, hence the solutions need to be sought even at the local level. Actually, that's the missing link right now. States need to take it up upon themselves to be focused around what they in their regulatory environment as well as the skilling environment. While there are much to say and people can go on talking about the Skill India campaign, honestly, I have not seen the level of adoption that one expected from states on the subject of skilling as they should have been. There have been initiatives of creating state missions, skilling missions, which barring a couple of states, I'm not really seeing anything happening. So I don't think this is a problem that one can solve sitting out of Delhi alone. So that's one aspect of it.
I think you make an important point.
In terms of job creation, I fully agree.
Go ahead. I'm sorry I interrupted you.
Yeah, Mr.
Go ahead.
No, I think on the subject of job creation, I fully agree that it is not sufficient for us to create just about any job. The need of the hour is to create jobs of dignity. I think the government has not erred on their part in terms of taking some really novel and innovative steps. I keep coming back to GST because I do believe that while for some people the cost of compliances have gone up, but actually the real victory is that it's going to bring back jobs of dignity. But yes, that impact we may not be able to see right now, but I do feel that we will see a widespread impact. Secondly, again, I think it is not about one single sector firing. It's not about services firing or IT. You cannot have flavor of the moments for a country like India. I think we need to have a plan by which all sectors fire. While I know quality is an important agenda, productivity is an important agenda, but a country of our size with 1 million youth joining every month, we have to fix definitely the quantity problem, and hence we need to revitalize manufacturing. And that's why ease of doing business, and I keep coming back that we have to do a lot more when it comes to labor reform to simplify to make it far more easy to understand and easy for entrepreneurs, because India. Yeah.
No, I need to go to my other panelists. I need to ask them.
Still a hostile.
It's still a hostile environment to do business. There are state differences. You can't just rely on the Prime Minister's Skill India program. These are all well taken points. My point is the expectations were raised with Skill India, and that's where one wonders whether those expectations have been met or not. Suman Sinha, in that sense, has industry let down the Prime Minister? Or is it simply a problem where unless you have a transformation across this country in the ease of doing business, if you push harder on key sectors, as I said, service sectors, possibly export driven growth, you are going to have a lag between supply and demand when it comes to jobs?
No, I think, Rajdeep, a couple of things. Number one, Skill India's mission was to create the supply of educated, qualified people who could then go into jobs. I think that mission is something that Skill India started off doing and hopefully will continue to work on. I think that's not to be confused with job creation. Job creation is a separate activity, and that is something that is linked to the overall development of the economy, as Gurcharan was pointing out, and it is linked to also very fundamentally to a couple of points that Rituparna was making, which is ease of doing business, very, very critical, not just for large companies but also for small entrepreneurs. And number two, it is a state level issue at the end of the day. And therefore what we require is a transformation in the way our bureaucrats function, our politicians at the state level function, because if they don't get the whole context of job creation, creating faster economic growth, then ultimately we will not create the millions and millions of new and micro enterprises that are required, eventually which will create the most number of jobs. So your question about is industry letting the Prime Minister down? I don't think so. I think industry reacts to the environment that we're faced with. If the environment is positive, which we hope it shall be, then industry will invest and industry will create jobs. However, those jobs ultimately will be a narrow part of the overall requirement of job creation that is required for a country as vast and diverse as India. And that is why you need a much more broad-based effort, which is the creation of many, many more new companies at the micro level. And that is why initiatives like digital infrastructure, Startup India, the whole issue about encouraging entrepreneurship, not just in urban centers but also in rural centers, I think those are things that absolutely are required. We need much more of a mushrooming in that area. And that is where the states have to really, really come to the party, Rajdeep. It is not something that can be driven by the center only.
I've got 30 seconds. Gurcharan Das, if there was one thing that you would do come tomorrow, given the fact that the Prime Minister is going in for this major cabinet reshuffle, if there was one thing that you would advise him in this need to get growth back on track, what would it be? Very quickly, sir.
I would focus on the ministries that are sensitive to exports. Commerce, textiles, and there are a number of others. And I would make sure that the people I put there really know their job. You know, it's very easy to get pessimistic about today global growth or the job creation. But the fact is today the global trade is 1.7 trillion and India's share is only 1.7%. Just imagine if we raise that by 1 percentage point and you'll get your job problem solved immediately.
Well, the fact is that post-demonetization, it appears the new normal is 5 to 6%, where once it was 7 to 8%. Either way, these are troubling times for the economy and troubling times, therefore, for job seekers. Appreciate your joining us on this discussion. As I said, we are determined to change the agenda from the usual polarized debates that are around religion. It's time to look at the real issues. And my take, as the Prime Minister prepares for a major reshuffle, reviving growth and creating jobs is probably his biggest challenge. That the first minister to be dropped from his cabinet is the skill development minister is a sign perhaps that all is not well. Building skills, generating jobs is a huge challenge for any government. Every month, lakhs of young Indians are entering the job market with great hope and expectation. There are no easy solutions, especially in the age of automation and technology. But the gap between promise and performance needs to be reduced. Politically, the Prime Minister remains as strong as ever, but the economic numbers should be a cause for worry. Let's hope for Achhe Din sooner rather than later.
Thanks for watching the video. For more such news and updates, please like, share and subscribe to India Today. Also check out our other great videos from our channel. We know you will love to.